there's people in hot water, and it's pretty clear that they made some moves on Friday to move silver down, move gold down. Definitely not an organic price move for a lot of these metals. I don't think it really changes the long-term story for any of these metals. So
Ben Kelleran talks about precious metals and our economic future here at ESW.
All right, everybody, it's Cowboy here. It is Tuesday, February the 3rd at 1:06 p.m. EST. I've got Ben Kelleran, who is back. Ben, who is traveling up north, taking a look at the silver mines, talking to people up there to find out exactly what's going on the ground. Ben, how you doing, sir?
Doing pretty good. It was an interesting trip. Learned a lot and talked to a lot of interesting people. So definitely can get into that a little bit today.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Before we get into all that stuff, please look in the description. We have some goodies for you. We got Ben's information, Contrarian Corner. You can find him, BR Kelleran, over on X, and just so much great stuff. Ben's a smart guy, and if you're not paying attention to what's going on over there, well, then that's your fault. So definitely take a look at it. We also have a free algo from our paid sponsor, Algo Factory. It's a video I made to show you how to do it, show you how to turn the algo into code, which is super easy to do. And I show you how traders will connect that to their brokerage so it will trade for them while they're not at the computer. Now, the algo I built is not plug and play. You have to optimize it. We can show you how to do that at algofactory.tech. So go on over, take a look. We'll be happy to show you. Also, more than 60% of the people who watch this, who come back and watch our shows every week, are not subscribed. Okay, that's the numbers. Sometimes it's 70, sometimes it's 60, whatever it is, don't be that person. Subscribe. You're going to help us get out there. If you think that what we say has value and you think other people should hear it, then subscribe, like, thumbs up, all that YouTube stuff. Go ahead and do it. Ben, where do you want to start?
I think it'd be interesting to talk about the painting the tape that happened in the precious metals the end of last week. So we can jump right into that. And I mean, I think it's pretty obvious with what has happened in the last several months that there's people in hot water, and it's pretty clear that they made some moves on Friday to move silver down, move gold down. And I think it also will be interesting to talk about platinum, palladium, some of the other stuff where I think, if I remember right, that was the biggest single day move in platinum, like in history. I'm not sure if it was the same for silver, but it's one of those events where it's like, okay, things reset and we get to see where things go from here. But I don't think it really changes the long-term story for any of these metals. So I can throw some charts too if you want to take a look, and we can get into it. But definitely not an organic price move for a lot of these metals.
No. I'm with you. It was the last trading day of the month on a Friday. Like, They did it. And JPM seemed to be the ones among others in hot water. So yeah, I see the chart there. Let's take a look.
Yeah. So we'll start with gold, but if you look at like moves like this going from 5,500 give or take to like under 5,000, right? When you have one of the asset classes like this moving that quickly in a day, there's stuff going on behind the scenes, and there's people that are more qualified to talk about, hey, this is the number of futures contracts, and here's what's said for delivery and all this other stuff. But I mean, I think there's a reason that you're going to see things bounce here. I mean, we already tapped close to 4,400 yesterday, and we're bouncing pretty good off that. So do we hang out at 5,000 for a bit, chop sideways to kind of work off the move from like beginning of December? Possibly. But again, this is the thing where if you look at what assets are going to hold up moving forward, it's going to be stuff that can't be printed, stuff that is basically anti-fiat. And right, if you can't go into where the markets are trading, what the valuations are there, you have the whole dynamic of bubbles create anti-bubbles. And that's where I think commodities come into play. And with silver especially, like you can tell if you look at this, like tapping 120 and then just completely carpet bombed down to like mid to low 70s. If you look at the like shorter term chart of like this and all on Friday, basically, that's not something you'd see in like organic price action, right? Going from 115, 117 down to 76 by the end of the day, right? And I think we're gonna like it'll take some time to start moving back up. I think moves like that make a lot of people like a little bit nervous and start to wonder, okay, what do we expect moving forward for a lot of these metals? And I'm still in the camp that silver is going much higher, gold's going much higher. All these things are going to be repriced as you see some of these different things, different trends playing out. But to go to like the favorite reason that I think we're nowhere close to being done, if you look at the silver price in China, we're still at a pretty chunky premium, right? So like well over 10% right now. So silver's at 97 in Shanghai and it's at 85 in the US. So again, right, are these sell-offs going to happen? Yes, nothing goes up in a straight line, but as long as you have the physical metal trading at a pretty significant premium where, hey, this is not a paper market, this is a cash and carry type market in China, I think you're going to see that that's going to act like gravity for a lot of the commodity prices moving forward. So, I mean, you see the same thing with platinum where it's like, okay, get a nice little move up, closing in on 3,000, and then comes in, paints the tape to end of the month, carpet bomb down to 2,000, tapping 1,900. So I think we'll bounce back pretty quickly on this one too, but it's the same thing where I think I can't remember where the exact premium was, but again, it was like 15% more expensive in China. And you see the same thing in palladium where it's like, okay, seems like things are moving up and then bam, month end, paint the tape, and we bounce pretty good, like up 10% off the bottom. So like these things are going to be volatile. That's where I think we're kind of in the stage of the game where things are bouncing around and it's not going to be a easy, smooth ride for a lot of these things. But I still go back to, okay, where is the value in the market? What are these things actually worth? Where is the supply, demand, all that stuff? Where are those factors? And where are like some of the miners trading compared to what they're actually worth? I think we're still going to see a lot of the miners do very, very well over the next several years. Obviously, oil can be a hit on margins. So if that starts to wake up, like it seems like it has in the last week or two. So since the beginning of January, we're moving along and finally starting to get above some of these moving averages, which is pretty interesting setup. And I mean, I don't know where oil is going to go. I think it's going to go a lot higher, but you see a lot of the energy stocks too. Like if you look at OIH and you look at XLE, XOP, a lot of these things are really starting to get ahead of the oil price. So there are at least some people positioning for further upside in some of these names. And when you look at the kind of bellwether of the whole thing, Exxon, right? That's basically a straight ramp vertical for what is the largest energy corporation outside of Aramco, but largest kind of Western energy corporation. And I mean, I think Exxon's probably going to, I don't know, 180, 200, like it's going a lot higher, especially when oil starts to wake up and cooperate. So like you don't build a, what was that, 3-year base somewhere in there coming off the COVID bottom. Yeah. So like basically 2022, just coiling, like you're not going to get, it's up 10%, the move's over. So you see the same thing in a lot of these different charts, and there's a lot of value there, even at current oil prices. But you start to get to 75, 80, 85. I mean, a lot of these things really just start to print. So that's when the dividends, buybacks, all that stuff starts to kick in, and it'll be some time before we make that move. But I'm starting to wonder too, this is maybe where you might have some interesting thoughts on oil being capped, but the kind of gauge for the Trump administration seems to be cheap oil and right, trying to kill inflation, but they're also pretty focused on not letting the boomers lose their real estate home equity, which if they look ahead more than a year or two is going to be a problematic policy for getting voter turnout, especially among younger generations. But I I'm sure you kind of saw the comments that Trump made on, oh, well, we could crash the real estate market, but we don't want to. And then them talking about the immigration problem. And it's like, oh, if they're hardworking and want to stay here, then we're not going to go after those people. It's like, well, there it is. Like, that's all you need to know about what they're going to do. And it's when he says, oh, we talked to the several business administration people and all this other stuff. It's like, okay, you talked to donors and they said, yeah, that's a problem for our scab labor, basically. So that's the rant on that stuff. But I think they're going to have some serious issues. There's a lot of problems to fix, but it seems like they're taking an interesting approach to some of them. And some of them are very misguided, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, I mean, the way it looks might not be the way that it is, but a lot of times it looks as if they're sort of throwing things against the wall, hoping that it sticks, but they're only allowed to throw certain things.
Yep.
So I was talking with Velas about this, or really just doing like a DM chat with him this morning. And there's an article talking about how the way assets are right now. And there's just the classic story that we always talk about. Everything is debt based. There's just a bunch of money being printed. And what that does is that it keeps the market high, which if you own assets, that's great. If you're a boomer and if you're part of the largest voting bloc, that's great. You want your home to stay high. But the reality is markets don't work that way. Not real markets. There are always pullbacks. And what those pullbacks do is they allow everything to reset. They allow asset prices to come down. They allow savers to take advantage of the money that they saved so that they can purchase cheaper assets and be a part of the game. And this permanent hold assets high and print money, what that's done is assets have continued to grow. Young people, new people not making a ton of money or just entering the workforce in the last few years can't take advantage of their dollars to invest. So their entire net worth is shrinking as a function of inflation, while everybody else is growing because of, they're holding assets. It's a very simple formula, something we talk about all the time. But when you have the president say that they're going to just continue to do that, yeah, you're turning off a pretty large group of people who want to have a chance at home ownership. While I personally don't think home ownership is the best place to invest, but a lot of people do. So it is what it is. And I don't think he's making any friends outside of the boomers.
Yeah. Well, one other point on that is like the proportion of those voters is going to be shifting over the next couple of years and really next decade as, right, you have the generational turnover where it's like every year, certain percentage of the boomers pass. And so, right, your voting block that is supportive of, okay, yeah, we need Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, all this other stuff. It's like, look, eventually there's going to be a big enough shift in the demographics where we decide, hey, we got to rip the Band-Aid off, and things that have become like the third rail in politics are going to be talked about openly. And that's where you see the Overton window shifting on some of the stuff. And I think that part's pretty exciting, but there needs to be a better longer term approach to a lot of these big issues facing the country on real estate affordability, on wages, on immigration, all these different topics. But there are certain things, like certain signs that there's already starting to be a correction in real estate. Like I've had, I reached out, did an like apartment tour around Boise, like looking at a couple places because there's been several new buildings that popped up, and so they're all trying to get filled up, and that's basically put significant pressure on the rental prices for kind of the area. And when they're just calling you out of the blue, saying, "Hey, like we're like trying to like basically talking you into like signing a new lease, getting a new apartment," the thing that's interesting is like some of the concessions they're offering. So you're starting to see signs of weakness in certain areas for kind of commercial multifamily real estate, but we'll see when that kind of extends to residential. I think there's certain areas that are going to get smoked and others that won't have it as bad. But as far as the actual prices, I think we're going to continue to see some compression there. And right, you can monkey with rates all you want, but I don't think that's a long-term fix. Yeah.
And I think a lot of that long-term fix is going to happen automatically because the system just simply can't continue as is. So It'll be interesting to see whether or not the demographic shift happens quickly enough and goes along with the money shift from the boomers down to like the Gen Xers and the older millennials. And will that happen in time for them to give a shit about their retirement? And I mean, I personally don't think that Social Security or retirement is worth a damn. I think by the time we get it, and I'm in my mid 40s, you're a bit younger, but I think by the time even I get it, it's just it's going to be like getting $500 a month. Like that's what it's going to feel like. It's going to cover like a car payment.
Yeah.
So
I think we need to get rid of it altogether.
Well, I know Tom Luongo, like a few months ago, maybe 2 months ago, he did the math, and had he just simply taken his money and invested it in the market, he would have like millions of dollars rather than the pittance that he gets out of Social Security. And it really is, Social Security is just it's a scam. It's just a way to, take money and put it where you want to put it.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny.
Well, I mean, a lot of that money is not even there if you kind of dig a little bit deeper. But I think the overarching point of that is like you talk to boomers about Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and they look at it as like some God-given right. And they don't realize that that's part of what's choking off right. If you have a society that is transferring money from young to old, right, there's going to be issues there, right? Yeah. It should be, right, the approach of, okay, the great societies are all built on the approach of you're going to plant the tree that you're never going to live to see or live to sit in the shade in, or whatever the phrase is, right? Right. That long-term, multi-decade, multi-generational approach is something that's missing. I think it's going to come back here in the next decade or two, but until then, you're going to see kind of continued generational divide topics and all these different things that I've kind of talked about. I had Mark Mitchell from Rasmussen Reports on the podcast recently. Yeah, and he's got his finger on the pulse on a lot of these issues. Like it's very, he's an interesting guy, and he is not pulling any punches when it comes to the recent Trump administration policies on real estate, immigration, all these different things.
You've had him on. Didn't you have him on like a year ago or longer?
No, that wasn't you. First time guest.
Okay, I know somebody had. Anyway, so that said, this is kind of. It's a good thing to understand this so that you can, in my opinion, either trade it or find a way to protect against it, or try to use it sort of on a high time frame to make predictions, right?
Yeah.
Definitely, it's certainly interesting.
Well, I think there's basically the high views. There's going to be an opportunity for actually more affordable home ownership here in the next 3 to 5 years, but I think it's going to be something that people that are patient on real estate right now are probably going to be rewarded with a much better buying opportunity in the next several years.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's tough because when you're saving in the current environment, if you just save your money, you're losing. So you have to understand the game. You have to understand where to put your money so that you can, not lose money during that period of years. But I think things are going to be on sale. And I think that, I think the equities market will continue to get pushed up until they cannot push it up any longer. And I do think, though, we will probably see deflation in certain arenas first. That they have to keep equities up. That's where the retirements are, and that's what people are looking at. But besides that, I don't know. Where do you think we might see some discounts before we really see like an equities retrace?
Well, it's tough to kind of pencil out like what is cheap right now and what's expensive, but like you don't have the extreme bargains in precious metals like you had over the last like couple of years. But at the same time, I think you look at broad asset classes and say, okay, equities fundamentally, like they're not cheap, and bonds, you're going to get inflated away into oblivion. And at some point, assuming we keep this whole dollar cycle and the US dollar stays the reserve currency, at some point, I think we get like a generational buying opportunity for like long-term bonds, like similar to 1980, where everyone was calling certificates of confiscation and all these different kind of things where it's like, look, if you can go back and buy US 30-year paper at 15, 16, 17, 18%, it's like, that's probably a layup at some point, right? Inflation's probably going to be high. Things are probably going to look really crappy. But if you turn around and buy that or zero coupon bonds, right, that's, I think, going to be a very good multi-decade trend. So again, that's way out in the future. That's at least 5 years, probably more. But I think that's the thing is like, you got to look at where money is, and you can tell by the valuation where money is parked in a lot of these things. And that's where you see, okay, bonds don't make a ton of sense. Equities don't make a ton of sense. Commodities are starting to reprice, but it's a process that's volatile. And like we were kind of saying, there's going to be bumps along the way. But as far as like a general asset class, I think that's a much better place to hang out for trying to preserve and grow your wealth over the next several years. I think oil is probably among the cheapest of the major kind of commodities. Like you can find some stuff in there that's very out of favor. Nickel, I think, is very interesting, but like copper has already started to work. Gold and silver obviously have had their move, or have started their move, I guess is a better way to phrase it. But with oil, I think there's significant upside there for people that look as like a 3 to 5 year view. So again, I don't know how much with what the Trump administration can do with SPR, with some of these different moves. And I mean, we'll see how long Venezuela takes and all these different factors. Like the oil market is very complicated, but I think that's a good place to be looking at some of these equities or some of these different companies that produce it or are tied to the services side of things, or would benefit from increased capital spending in the energy space, because that's where like you look at stuff as cyclical, like it's eventually going to overpower any non-fundamental kind of interventions, I guess is the way to put it, from governments, from other parties.
Well, I know back to the precious metals kind of hanging out there. I know that a lot of your high net worth types, they don't see it, excuse me, they don't see it as a place to make money, but rather as a place to like freeze their wealth, right? It's kind of like, pausing the game, keeping everything where it is. And then once you can find something that is out of balance, you take advantage of that. Yeah, sure. The long-term stuff, if you call that right, then you're good. But in ever increasing market distortions, I think, like you said earlier, it's really hard to pencil out what's cheap and what's expensive because everything is just so distorted. So until you have a money system that isn't basically about to overdose on heroin, I think it might be kind of tricky to pick for a long-term move what's going to be good and bad. Is our bond market going to rupture because everything is moving away from US debt, or is that going to be a super slow process? And we see US debt is fine in 5 years. Maybe it's not as good as it is now, but it's plenty good, and it was better than other choices. Like it's I know being in this community since say 2010, I've heard every story in the world about how the dollar is going to die. I've heard it all. Yeah, here we are spending dollars. Yes, there's inflation, and yes, things cost more, but there's always been inflation, and things have always costed more. So it's just one of those things where how are we reacting emotionally, or are we acting or reacting pragmatically? And this is really the question. And but again, it's how do you price it out? I'd say just like any other time, diversification is probably a good idea, but I think maybe, at least for my own taste, not investment advice, diversification into something that's more like a hard asset, it just makes me more comfortable. I don't know that it's the best choice. It just makes me more comfortable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have, like to your point on the wealth preservation, whether it's gold, silver, platinum, like the precious metals right announced today is going to be announced in 5 years, 10 years. And right, especially gold even longer, where right doesn't rust, doesn't have any decay, anything like that. So there's a reason that gold has been the kind of foundation of what our monetary system has been going back effectively to the beginning of time. And so when you pull, like you said, pull away from that and have the distortions since 1971, but really over the last 100 years, then you're going to see some weird boom and bust cycles where even if you start looking at gold to equities, gold to different asset classes, like, okay, that's right. The volatility and the bigger moves and the size and scale of those moves is a sign that right, fiat and the whole basically capital is chasing returns and looking for a place to go. And when you get everyone on one side of the boat, you get those extremes. And when you have the fiat distortion and like the constant inflation going on in the background, then you're going to see these things where, right, you talk to people about what wages were back in their day and what they are now. It's like, look, there's a massive disconnect because people think younger generations wanting 80,000, 100,000 right out of college is delusional. But then you look at cost of living, you look at what, right, the starting salaries were 20 years ago. It's like, that's kind of where they would have been. But they were like, oh yeah, I made like 50 right out of college. Right. So you start to do the math. It's like, well, I don't know if it's that delusional to want money that would be enough to raise a family on and right have all those things. So I think that's kind of one of those disconnects that it's going to be hard because people are anchored to their experience in the past.
I think what's missing is where we are in the world. And I told the story recently. I was taking a university course. I was still not university, really, just like a JC course. I was in high school, just taking just college courses. And the economist or the economics professor at the time was talking about how, our standard of living is much higher than the rest of the world. And we went through that whole talk, and I asked him, being rather naive at the time, at 16, 15 years old, I said, oh, well, when is the rest of the world going to catch up to us? And he says, no, we're going to catch down to the rest of the world. And so I think he's referring to, and we didn't go beyond that discussion because I don't think anybody was ready for it. We're a financial economy. We have been for a long time. We haven't been a production economy since like the 50s or 60s, right? And that got hollowed out. And here's the reality of it. China, India, those places, they can just produce stuff for really cheap. And the rest of the world was going to start using them, like Europe and the rest of the first world. They were going to start using those countries to produce their goods and do it cheaply. And so, we had to get in there and do that. Otherwise, our companies would have simply been left behind. Our financial power in the world would have decreased. We would have had to rely on a bunch of first world countries not to use China, right? There would have been some kind of a cartel agreement. And in the end, the sphere of influence was just going to be eroded if we didn't do that. And everybody, we took our jobs overseas. Like, that was going to happen. We're just too financialized here. We have too much power, exporting our inflation to the rest of the world because of the position of the dollar, all the stuff we always talk about.
Yeah.
So this having happened, the effects of that are going to take a long time. Our prominence in the world was built up over 50 years, if not much, much longer than that. And our prominence in the world isn't just going to disappear in 10 years. But at the same time, there are going to be some key points where that's going to happen. And holding on to the past and the way things were, I was making this much when I got out of school, that's not going to do any good. You have to look at the way things are and not wish for the way things were, which is also another trite, cliche thing to say, but it's just ever more true. When I was a kid in the 80s, a young kid in the 80s, I was always told, yeah, you get a college degree, you can write your ticket. Because that's how it was in the early 80s, in the 70s, in the 60s. You get a degree, you can write your ticket, you're going to make all this money. By the time I got a degree in the early 2000s, that just wasn't the case. While it did open some doors for me, certainly, and it wasn't completely useless, I would have been better just to not go to university, just like wait tables, save my money, put it towards like the stock market. I'd be rich, or even put it in anything. You name an asset, I would be, well, okay. Effectively, I ended up doing that later, but had I started back then, I probably would be far more wealthier than I am now. So just there's a definite trend, and that trend is not reversing. And so people are going to have to, I think we're going to be forced into some form of socialism before this is done. There's massive layoffs are happening right now. It's not getting any easier for these kids getting out of college, and they can whine and complain about it all they want, and they'll just whine and complain all the way to living in their parents' basement, or they can figure out a way around it. I don't see any other choice.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing, is that there's going to be major changes politically, major changes economically, and this is one of those things where it's going to take some time. But I think there are going to be different groups and different approaches to how we work on supply chains, how we work on like the health of the country and job market, all these different things, right? If you look at the job stats and all these different unemployment reports, the way they track that is just fake. But for where things are as far as the health of the economy, there's a reason that a lot of people are very pessimistic right now with the way things are going. And it doesn't help to see the amount of offshoring and like all these different things that kind of the big corporations love to do. So does that reverse for some of these companies? Probably not. But do individual Americans and smaller companies start to focus on what can be built here and what can be built for the benefit of the people around them? I think that's where you're going to see the shift and I think that's a durable change where people wake up and realize, hey, there's a reason Henry Ford did things the way he did at his company. And there's a reason that like the so-called robber barons, if you look at like their impact, so like set aside Rockefeller and the health like side of things for a second. If you look at what Rockefeller, Carnegie, Mellon, all these different guys did for the US, right? I think we're going to see figures like that emerge over the next 10, 20, 30 years. Like basically the great American businessman that is doing it for the benefit of his people and not just chasing whatever is going to be highest earnings per share and what can make the most in like this hyper financialized economy.
I agree. V said it, and we've been seeing it the last few shows where even though there's a lot of turmoil coming, it's already here, but it's probably going to get a bit worse. This is the time when millionaires and billionaires are made during this time. And so, Rockefeller, all those types. Yeah, of course, we can talk about all how they're evil and they're the Illuminati or whatever you want. But in reality, that's when those guys got made. Yeah. And, so not all those guys had family connections either. Like, yes, okay, you can only be rich if you have family connections. No, I've got a billionaire uncle. He married into our family. My family didn't want him because he didn't have his own money. He was broke. He ended up just having a really good idea and becoming a billionaire by himself. So anytime anybody says there's no self-made billionaires, I'm like, fuck, how many billionaires do you know? Because I know 3, personally. So there are opportunities. And you can't just be like, you can't be like depressed about this or that and the other. I mean, you can certainly, and I'm not saying you can't be depressed, but I'm saying that if you want to just have a chance at a good future, if you want to be active, proactive, if you want to be working towards something, then wallowing in how terrible things are is not really going to get it done.
Yeah, that doesn't get you anywhere.
No. When I say the things I say about us catching down to the rest of the world and all this, a lot of people probably take that as being black-pilled. No, it's just clear-pilled. It's just the trend. And, it may happen way slower, but whatever is happening, there are always opportunities. And this is like my whole thing. You find the opportunities.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot out there. I think there are certain things going on in different areas of the economy where like I'm pretty optimistic on some things, and on others, I think it's going to be a disaster. So we'll see kind of how it plays out. But I know one of the recent updates, and this has been interesting to watch, is some of the stuff going on with critical minerals again. Like that's been all the rage with some different things, and they basically are putting together a seed fund.
Is that? Do you want me to share that screen?
Yeah, if you can pull that up. I think it's called like the Vault program, something or other. But they're basically putting 12 billion into different investments to basically work on supply shortages from different materials, and we'll see kind of how long it takes. I'm sure there's some different palms being greased on a program like this, but as far as, hey, we need to be able to make certain things here and have certain abilities to have a functioning economy, military, all these different things. Like I think this is actually a good, important change for the U.S. And again, it's going to take some time. It's not an overnight process, but it's at least a step in the right direction. So it seems like there's some headlines on rare earths or all these different things like once a month, but I think their approach has kind of been, we're going to throw a ton of money at the problem and we're going to keep doing that until we think we're in a much better place. So I think some of the rare earth stocks are basically pumps that are really hard to say, hey, that's a good value here. But is there opportunities in the space for people that are entrepreneurial and able to understand like what's going on? I think so. So that's just something to think about. And then the other thing that we were kind of chatting about a little bit is apparently there's a trade deal now with India. So that'll change in like 2 weeks because that seems to be about the lifespan of some of these agreements. But yeah, at least for now, like it seems like we're going to be making a deal with India on different trade. And I have mixed feelings about like the tariff program. It's obviously not like the most efficient on certain things, but if it were done intelligently, I think that would be a much better approach to the way the economy runs than what is done now, especially on the taxation side of things. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on the tariff deal. My guess is it's not worth thinking or talking about too much because it'll change here in a month. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, it's either a taco or not. Taco Trump always chickens out. So we'll see how that goes. I know that's a derogatory thing, and it's all the fashion for everybody, even the right to be mad at Trump. I get it. But by the same token, a lot of the stuff is negotiation tactics, and it's who knows how things are done. I don't consider any of this 5D chess, even if it is that. I think it's just chess. So either it's a negotiation tactic, or there's a better deal that gets made, or I don't think it really affects any of us in the near term. Like I won't be making any money on it. I think it's just something to look at. If you're interested, follow it. I think it's a glorified form of entertainment. And if it ends up sticking around and lasting, then it's another story, right? But that would have to probably be through some broader agreements and other stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all the world's a stage, right? So that's kind of where things are at. And I think the important thing for stuff like this and any of the economic or current events or different things, like I always go back to filtering it through, why am I seeing this and why am I seeing it now, right? Because there's a lot of different agendas. I'm sure people over the weekend saw some of the different things with Epstein and some of these different people that are connected to him. And I mean, that's the other thing is you can watch what they say or you can watch what they do, right? And their actions are always going to tell you more about their motivations than what they say about it, right? So we'll see if this whole Epstein thing starts to devolve, but I think it's probably something that blows over in the news cycle again, because that's kind of been the pattern on these things. And I mean, the thing about it is like, what's going to happen? Like, what is in your control? Like, unless someone's going to put together a group and start organizing and going to the Capitol and getting out ropes and guillotines, then these people are not going to do anything to punish anyone responsible, because that's not how DC works, right? That's not how the World Economic Forum and all the people in Europe that are doing the same thing, that's not how they work, right? And the other thing is there's more speculation again that, one, Epstein's still alive, but I mean, what is anyone going to do about that? And even if he wasn't alive, there's a guy that took his place and is doing the same thing and is running the same program, right? Because that's the Israeli playbook on a lot of stuff. So, like, I don't have a strong view on what's real, what's fake, who's involved, who's not. But it's one of those things where I look at some of the stuff going on and what people are saying, and it's like, yeah, there is a solution to all this, and that's heads on pikes. But what do we have to do to get to there? And at the same time, it's not something you can do on your own. So you probably shouldn't spend a ton of time thinking about it or wasting your emotional, basically wasting your fucks on how wired up you can get about a topic like this, right? There are better things to focus on at the individual level.
That's something I've been trying to tell my friends, but you got to let people just go through their process. I would say also what needs to be understood about this is that it could easily be a lot of it an op. It's really easy just to fake a couple emails.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like, if you can throw together AI generated clips and all this other stuff, then right, I'm pretty sure they can fake screenshots of old email addresses. So
yeah, it's really easy. It doesn't mean that these things aren't real. And what I would look at this, a lot of it probably is real. I would say, consider what's easily corroboratable, if that's a word. What can be easily corroborated, that might be kind of where to lean on. Okay, this is probably real. The stuff that's less remarkable is probably more real. Trump SAing children, taking turns with them, and then using a hand cannon to pink mist to the kids. Okay, yeah, probably not true.
Yeah,
that's just,
if that was the case, they would have used it in 2016 or 2020 or 2024.
Yeah, there's a lot of ridiculous stuff out there that's just okay. So, and what I'm also concerned about with that is that they're going to deliberately put some things in there that influencers are going to grab onto, and then those things are going to be disproven, and those influencers are going to be discredited. And in the end, yeah, sure, a lot of it's probably real, but a lot of it is probably not. And there's no way for us to know. And I'm going to be very blunt with you all. Can I make any fucking money on the Epstein files? No. Then, okay, what else am I going to do today? Am I going to make any money bitching about the Epstein files or yelling about them or sending them to all my people and see, look, it's them, it's the Jays. It's, okay, all right, fine. There are a ton of people already doing that for you. So if you think it's really important that it's going to get out, don't worry, it's going to get out. People are going to spread, and they're going to, spend some time being productive. I'm of the opinion that 90% of whatever's on Twitter is there to distract you from being productive. Don't let this be another one. Maybe I got something wrong with me. Maybe I just don't get emotional about these things. It's even if it's real, it's okay, yeah, it's terrible. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, you got to curate your who you're following on Twitter to make sure you're actually getting some value out of using it, not just scrolling and on the endless loop of entertainment for the dopamine hit. But the one thing I will say for this whole Epstein file thing is it's just another topic that over the last 5 years has been more and more mainstream and started to get out there into the public consciousness or widespread awareness. And so I think as you start to see some of the stuff cycle through, that is something where I think there is going to be a change on what people are aware of, people being aware of Israeli influence, of politics in the US, of foreign policy, all these different things. And so that is a good change, but is it going to be something where someone comes in, snaps their fingers, all the people that are behind Epstein and involved, right, that they're all going to be locked up or hung? No, it's not a one-day thing. And my guess is that it's not something where the system holds them accountable at all, because that's right. That's what the system is built on. right? The purpose of a system is what it does, right? So if your system is focused on trafficking kids and, right, go down the list, trafficking drugs, like all the stuff that our country has been known to do and our intelligence agencies have been known to do, then, right, that system is not going to hold itself accountable. So that's kind of why I think people shouldn't get too ahead of themselves on, right, there being a fix inside the system. So I'm kind of the opinion that this eventually all breaks down and we get a benevolent monarch or something like that. But the path there is messy.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about the strongman. I don't know. Yeah, sure. The strongmans I've ever seen in history or heard about or read, or they all seem to be in countries that are like 90 some odd percent the same genetics. So, a place like China, Russia is probably lesser than that. I mean, Russia's actually a pretty diverse place, but in the same time, like Russia's Russia. If you don't like it, you can leave. Like, so we don't really have that here. Russia doesn't have mass, importation or whatever you call it, mass migration from like Africa. You don't see that there. So would a strong man survive here? I don't know. I think under any circumstance, here, there, everywhere, for a strong man to survive, he has to have the most powerful people behind him to protect him. And that's Putin is not excluded from that. I know Ian Burlingame recently talked about that, and he's talked about it a number of times. So in reality, if you get a strong man, he's actually being backed by some important people, and that only makes sense. That's only logical.
Well, that's how it's always worked, right? Kings, like going back to the beginning of time, they had trusted advisors and people that were also invested in doing what's best for the country and doing what's best for the people. But it's not like every single decision gets routed up all the way to one guy who makes every decision. And then, right, that's how society goes. It's going to be like he has the ultimate say, but then there's a bunch of people, a power structure beneath him where it's, look, someone has to have the final responsibility. Otherwise we end up with this like blob like structure that has no accountability and has no term limits. It doesn't, right, phase out depending on who's in government or whatever. But if you have someone that's responsible and actually acting in the best interest of the people, right, that's something where you need buy-in from other wealthy, powerful elites.
Yeah, it's. I think a strongman is going to be your North Star, if you will. So always kind of pulling in a direction, and also is going to be a tiebreaker between when most of the power players can't come to agreement. When rocks meet hard places, that's when you're going to have somebody in charge that needs to pull. We have an entire society that's a rock and a hard place than you're in the U.S. and neither the rock nor the hard place are very healthy. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's all fine and good. Just the way I look at it is like, look at the serious people in your life, the people who get shit done. Are they scrolling on Twitter? Are they reading the Epstein files? Like, no, they're working and they're preparing for the worst. Like, there's certainly people who are gathering enough information to be able to make a decision to protect themselves, right? So I do think that one positive thing from the files is understanding how a small country in the Middle East has way too much control over our policy here in the US. That's for sure. But we're already there. A lot of people are starting to figure that out as well. So
yeah, never,
it definitely puts the cherry on top of that.
Yeah, no, it'll be one of those things, one of those topics that becomes, easier to talk about for some people. So I hope happens quickly. It might not be an overnight change, but I think that's where you see a lot of these different changes happening, from politics to current events, government policy, investments, finance, like what's going on in markets. And I think there's going to be what I think is effectively like a reordering of how the US runs things. And it's not going to be the kind of all gas, no brakes policy that we've had over the last 15, 20 years. But like, especially pre-COVID, like I think you're going to see more government involvement in certain strategic things. You're going to see markets that are not completely organic, but are going to continue to try and adjust to the reality that I think is coming. You're going to see other countries start to exert influence over certain regions, certain geographies, just like the U.S. has been doing in South America. I think China will eventually either buy Taiwan or do something where Taiwan becomes a part of China at some point. Russia at the same time, like whenever this whole Ukraine circus ends, like when they run out of money or men to kind of shovel into that, then I think Russia picks up a chunk of territory, if not the whole thing, and Europe is kind of the odd man out in all this. So that's where
it seems to be where it's going, doesn't it? I mean, we haven't heard much about Ukraine in the news lately,
Yeah.
And so, I mean, and Russia is just, during the WEF, Russia just really hit Kiev hard, and they even hit it with they even hit the energy infrastructure, which is something that has been kind of held as a non-target. So I think we're getting to the point where that what you're saying is going to happen is probably going to happen.
Yeah. Well, I think
Europe's going to just be the big loser on that one, because the longer this goes, the less of like Ukrainian income Europe can claim, and the less interesting their debt is going to be. I mean, Europe doesn't want it to end because they can continue to claim their Ukrainian income, and that way their European bloc stays like solvent. But the longer they go, the worse it's going to get. So I think they're riding Ukraine until the wheels fall off, personally.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they don't have much of a choice, but at the same time, they basically put themselves in between a rock and a hard place for their energy policy, for all these different things like regulations, the EU. Like, I go back to it, but I think the EU is going to collapse in the next 5 years. So that takes the euro with it. And I think there are some countries that could come out of it quicker, but it's, I think there's a change coming on a bunch of fronts, and it's going to be, I think it's going to be wild times to live in, but long term, I'm very optimistic about the direction of the U.S. In particular, but I think there are certain changes that need to be made, and people are starting to wake up to some of those topics that you weren't allowed to talk about over the last 20, 30, hell, even 50 years.
Yeah, I think certain groups are going to come under pressure, and they're either going to have to act right and or get out. And there's a lot of groups. There's a particular group that no matter how many times you put them under pressure, they end up never acting right. So I don't know what's going to happen to them.
I can think of at least a couple groups that are like that.
There's at least a couple, yeah. So I think it would be, perhaps time to start showing people the door. But I think that's part of the process, and I don't think we'll be able to truly kick out the parasites until things really fall apart, because they have a hold on a lot of power, and until that power is gone by virtue of that power melting away, it's a mess. But then again, nobody wants the collapse to happen, because then their life becomes less comfortable. So it's all kind of one of those things where it's all one big picture, and there's all of the solutions. It is a big chessboard. And I'm not a very good chess player, mostly because I'm extremely impatient. But what I do remember about chess is you have these times when everything's been lined up and there's kind of nowhere to go, and you just have to start killing people in order to move the game along. And then every situation is linked to the other situation, and it's just the dominoes fall. And it's just, I think we're getting close to that. I don't want to say stalemate, but we're getting close to that point of each move is going to be far more consequential coming up very, very soon.
Yeah.
That's where I think we are. And then when that happens, as the chaos kind of begins, this is when the people will start to move. And this is when locally you will have the ability to make moves, because nationally everybody's going to be so busy dealing with their national stuff. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I don't know.
That's the thing is I was watching your guys' show that this is the time where opportunities show up, big opportunities as these major changes and major cycles happen. And that's where I think it was Game of Thrones. The chaos is a ladder, right? I mean, if you look at it as, hey, this is an opportunity, then there's going to be more chances for people that look for opportunities in like the different problems and the different things that are going on than people that look at the issues we have as the world is ending. There's nothing I can do about it. And there's nothing that I can do like on a personal level to try and make some changes.
Yep. No opportunities in the chaos. And I think that even comes down to fitness. Like, it comes down to if you really want to take advantage of the opportunities, you're going to have the energy to do so. And if you are not physically fit, then this will not happen. So this, everybody wants to, oh my God, it's kind of like the ammo thing. Whenever you get like a two-way president in, the ammo gets cheap. No one wants to buy it. And then you get in like a Biden, and then all of a sudden it's the pandemic and people are paying 5 times as much per round. Cause this, and then all of a sudden that goes away. Trump's in and ammo's really cheap. Like, no, this is the time to buy ammo. Like, it's the same thing. This is an easy time. I know people don't feel that way, but I guarantee you 2-3 years down the road, we're going to look back at these times and go, man, times are really easy. Like, okay, fine. Work now, do the work now, find the opportunities. And of course, I always talk about Algo Factory. That's an easy thing, because if it's really hard to price long-term what's happening in the market, it's really hard to like kind of choose your, horses. You can at least figure out what's going to go up and down in a week or in a few days or in a few hours. That's another game to play. I also think for those who are not interested in markets, I think the place to get some training is going to be in construction and electrical infrastructure expansion. I think those places are the future for people who are going to need jobs in like 5 or 10 years. Because even if we go down some techno whatever future, they're going to have to give people drugs and video games, and that does not happen without the data centers and the fiber optics.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things that are going to change, and there's, I think, opportunities in real world, like physical assets, careers, opportunities that are they're out there. And so I think that for a long time, people have been hyper focused on what are like the highest margin, low capital intensity businesses, where it's right, Google, Microsoft, Amazon. Actually, Amazon is not really fitting that bucket exactly. Their cloud business does, but anyway, right, the companies that can basically reinvest like super low marginal cost for new customers, all that stuff, right? I think that's a thing of the past. And you look at what they're doing on their expenditures, it's like, okay, they're turning into a very different industry than they were 5 years ago. So, like you said, that's going to be another change to keep an eye on. So I think there's lots of opportunities in real assets, real businesses, real infrastructure, all these different things.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, I would get a skill. For example, I was in energy construction for like 3 years. I was actually a mechanic working on, it was compressed natural gas compressors, industrial compressors. So it was on a large scale. And the installation, operation, and maintenance of such things. So if it ever came down to it, and I don't know, the market ended or something, which is probably the last thing to go, but in some theoretical world, yeah, I could just go and do that work. I have the tools. I've got a truck. Like, I could literally go and do that work, and I'm healthy. So if it came to it, I have a skill set where that doesn't have to be trained. So if you're somebody who, you don't feel comfortable going into any other game, whether it's, market or doing a YouTube channel, whatever it is, I think it's a great place to go. And you know what? There ain't nothing wrong working with your hands, man. I did it for years and I loved it. You're healthy, you're out there, you're building something. If anybody's ever ashamed of that, then there's something wrong with you. You need to go do that work. It's good stuff.
Yeah. I think that's a good place to leave it, as far as what another thing I think is going to be changing is like the careers that people look down on because it's not a high status or some of these different things. Like, I think that's going to change, and people will realize, hey, like all these different physical real world trades and opportunities, right? They don't have, like, you're not going to automate a plumber. You're not going to automate like mining for the most part. And you're not going to do soon. That's the thing, is like, there's a place to be for putting together, I think, a very good career. And that's why I'd encourage young guys to look at mining, for example, as an interesting idea because a lot of those guys, and this is a kind of anecdote from my trip, which we probably should have talked about a little bit more, but like I talked to some of the guys that work up at Hecla's Lucky Friday mine in kind of outside Coeur d'Alene area. And like a lot of those guys are clearing like 150, 200,000 a year. And for a lot of these mines have profit shares. And so for the guys that are working hourly in December, I think their hourly profit share was like an extra 30 an hour on top of their like traditional wage, right? So you can imagine what their profitability is going to look like with silver averaging what 85, 90 in January, whatever the average number is, right? That mine's going to be very profitable, right? So that profit share is going to be 40 an hour, right? On top of your just basic wages. So like there are opportunities out there for guys that don't need or want to go to college for different trades and careers that might not have like the flash of some of the stuff you see on TV. But as far as where I'd be looking if I were starting from scratch, like I wouldn't bother with college, and I'd be looking at some of the physical trades and some of the physical infrastructure, like real business side of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we live in the same area, and down on Meridian, you might have seen the Lyman College.
I think so. Driven by it once or twice. Yeah,
Meridian, south of the 84 by a couple miles, and that's, I mean, that thing's full. There's people out there all the time learning how to be linemen, you know. So yeah, I would be looking at those physical trades, even if it's as simple as like HVAC. You know, I know that's kind of like a meme thing now, but dude, seriously, like everybody's going to need air conditioning and heat. I don't care what kind of freaking world you're in.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you're looking down on people like to do physical labor or whatever, then you must be a young person who's never had to pay bills. That's like, you know, I've been there. I've done a lot of stuff. I've done sales. I've done physical work. I've done construction numerous times. Like, hey man, it's going to come to a point where having a job is going to be like amazing. It's like, man, I have a job. Like it's going to be like the Depression. That's how the Depression was. People were just roving around looking for work. They would do anything. They're like the migrant people who come up from the South who actually want to work. That group of migrants, like it's like that. They just need money and they're going to do it because they got to eat. And that's where we're going. And, you know, that's where I think we'll be. I don't know. Could be wrong. We'll see. Maybe they make robots and we live in a utopia, right?
I think the whole robot push is, it'll be interesting to see. I don't think that's going to play out how people might think, but
I think it's premature. And I think even if it's not premature, it's not going to play out how you think.
Yeah.
You know, they don't like useless eaters.
Yeah. Well, I think the utopia setup, unless we have a change to like the benevolent monarch type figure, like I said, like there's no way you get a utopia with the current class of ruling elites. Just not possible. So
no,
yeah.
No. If the Epstein files are true and the stuff they're doing in there is true, then no.
Yeah. No, you'd have to clear them out first. But anyway, I could rant on that stuff for a long time and didn't want to get too preoccupied with it. But I think that's what I'll leave people with is like there's lots of opportunities out there, and it does help to know where to look. But I don't think it's in becoming the next computer engineer, computer programmer, or like the next financial whiz. And right, that's kind of some of our focus is on markets, but right, knowing what I know now, it's like would have taken a very different path as far as what I did after high school. But that's just me. So,
well, you know, we are where we are. We got born where we were born, right? So,
yep.
You know, look at our friend up in Coeur d'Alene. You know, that guy. He's like, I mean, that's a smart guy. I think he has like a physics degree. And you know, he's done well for himself in the world of surveying, and he got all his licenses, and he's building his own company. And, you know, he's using his mind, but it's physical work, right? And he learned the physical work so that he could, you know, go beyond that. I haven't talked to him in a minute though. Gotta talk to him. He's a good guy.
Yeah. So we'll have to chat with him at some point, but yeah.
You were right up there by him, man. You could have.
Yeah. I mean, I was slammed. I was all over the place last week. basically every day going to different mine sites, different companies, different people that know the area. So like I didn't have any free time at all last week.
You going to put together, anything from the information you got? Or are you going to do like a report?
I'm going to do a write-up probably out like on Thursday later this week on just talking to the different people, like what I learned from people that are like have experience like working underground in some of these different mines, the kind of on-site guys, management that I got to talk to at a couple of these locations. I actually got to talk to the CEO and his son, who is, I mean, it's basically a family company, but they're publicly traded, Idaho Strategic Resources.
Okay.
I got to talk to them for like a couple hours, and they know
Closely
all
held
the.
then.
Well, it's, I think they own a good chunk of it, but I mean, they're like a $700 million company or something. So they're big. So
Yeah.
they've they've done pretty well for themselves, and they've got a pretty interesting land package up there. And I own a couple shares just to be fully open on that, but not anything huge. It's just part of the miner basket that I own. But from talking to them, they know all the inside baseball on most of the assets in Idaho and most of the things going on as far as the kind of rumors, rumblings about what companies are Canadian lifestyle companies and they're never going to build a mine, and what companies have good management, what assets are good, what assets are not so good or have serious problems. So like those guys are very, very sharp, and definitely guys that we'll hope to continue to talk to, but learned a lot from the trip. I'll definitely be doing a write-up on it later this week.
Nice. I'll look forward to it. Contrarian Corner. Look in the description. That's where you can find Ben and his work. Excellent work. And I want to thank you for coming on. And hopefully we'll have you back next week.
Yeah.
As long as you get some good sleep and you're not, traveling to the silver mines.
Yeah. I've had a couple things keep me up late, a couple ideas I'm working on, but those would take some outside investors with deep pockets. So we'll keep working on that part. But
we know some of those guys.
Got a couple ideas I think are interesting. So anyway.
Yeah, no, we know guys who like ideas.
Yeah.
Especially when it involves metals.
Yeah. No, I'll we can run it by and shoot the breeze on it a little bit. But yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. All right, everybody. We will see you tomorrow. I think Gus is going to be on. I don't know for sure. But if so, we'll see you there. If not, we'll be back. Oh, no, that's right. EM is out for like a month. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to be next. We'll let you know. Thanks for watching, everybody.